If you're new here, welcome. If you smell other stuff, well, welcome back. Some of you might have noticed we're doing a bit of a different mic situation today. I was playing games with my friends and screamed so loudly, I somehow broke this one, but I think this one's gonna get the job done. Normally, I only use it when I'm playing guitar, but I think it's gonna work for this video. Obviously, if you've got a recommendation for a good condenser microphone, please let me know in the comments. I absolutely need to buy a new one, but yeah, I think this will get the job done, at least for this video. I've been thinking a lot about how I want to conceptualize the rise of One Nation and support for Pauline Hanson, despite the fact that a lot of their policies are entirely inconsistent, or it's just not going to be possible. And I truly think one of the best ways to conceptualize this party is by seeing them as a scam and a scam artist. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about this in the legal sense. I am not making a genuine or legal argument that I believe Pauline Hanson or One Nation intends to illegally defraud the Australian people. I'm talking about it in that casual sense where there is zero universe that One Nation and Pauline Hanson are going to follow through or do the things they are promising the Australian people. And I want to unpack not only some of the biggest lies, in my opinion, but also why this is able to work, how they are able to get away with this, and why it doesn't actually matter if people understand that One Nation can't do what it says. I want to thank you all very much for the support on the recent videos. I truly do appreciate it. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments. I do try to reply to as many as I possibly can, but hey, let's get into it. Monoculture is the buzzword of the week, and unfortunately, you can make the most reductionist arguments known to man, but it's still exceptionally effective. I find it exceptionally funny that Pauline Hanson is trying to use the lyrics of Australia's national anthem to advocate this idea of a monoculture because it's one and free, when it actually used to be young and free, and Scott Morrison specifically changed that to incorporate Indigenous Australians. And if you go down into the later lyrics of the song, it specifically says, "For those who've come across the sea with boundless plains to share," implying that we're bringing people in and sharing the country with them. Now, obviously, we can talk about the broader philosophical point there of you would only want to be bringing people in who share your common values, but as I've talked about in many of my other videos, that common value Australia particularly holds is that idea of Western liberalism, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion. And I feel like inherently when we talk about freedom of XYZ, it's the freedom to choose between a couple of different things. It's not the freedom to only be Christian, it's the freedom of religion they're champion. And the reality is, a lot of the time when people are talking about this Australian monoculture, they're not talking about Western liberalism, they're talking about white, they're talking about Christian. They want it all to tie back to that settler colonial identity, when again, as we've talked about extensively before, that idea of white they all cling onto was not what Australia ever was, and it's not what it ever will be. One Nation is a party who desperately wants to villainize migrants coming into the country searching for a better life because they're taking jobs, they're taking homes from the everyday Australian. That it's wrong that companies and the elites are taking advantage of low-skilled, low-cost labor, despite the fact that that is a practice One Nation itself is actively engaging in. The reality is this is a party who drastically wants to cut the number of immigrants coming into this country. They want to cut the number of international students that are coming into this country. They want to set stricter conditions on who can come into this country, but they have no solutions for any of these things. It is actually a genuine moment of let's destroy the economy to own the libs, because they're not going to increase funding to universities. They're not going to put any systems in place that actually deal with the gaps in the workforce that need to be dealt with. And when it comes to housing and rentals, immigration absolutely impacts the supply, but what impacts it more was those horrific tax concessions we used to be giving to property investors, but thankfully the Labor government scrapped those. One Nation wants that mass deportation of illegal immigrants, but we are talking about 0.3% of the population. Obviously, I don't like illegal immigration. I don't think it's the best thing when people overstay their visas. I don't think this is a big enough issue where we need to be facilitating Gestapo-style raids like we've been seeing in the United States. I don't like the idea of big government coming into my neighborhoods and ripping people out of their homes, but maybe that's just the wokeness in me. But again, it doesn't matter that there would be this greater control because One Nation does not remotely care about freedom. The idea that I need to be scared of immigrants coming to this country and robbing me of my freedom of safety is ridiculous when One Nation's own policies dramatically rip away people's freedoms, or in my opinion, put people in a position that is more unsafe. One Nation is absolutely trying to put women's healthcare on the ballot. One Nation Senator Malcolm Roberts wants the government to be in control of women's health. He wants to take away women's autonomy. He wants to make it sure that Australian women's medical decisions are not between their doctor and themselves. It's between their doctor, themselves, and Pauline Hanson's One Nation. It is not about freedom. It is about control. And nothing exemplifies that more than the fact that One Nation actively wants to take away resources that domestic violence survivors use to escape their perpetrators. That One Nation is talking about removing funding from women so they can escape financial abuse, that they can get away from domestic violence because, oh, there's the wrong incentives there where they could use it to put a false accusation forward. It is that genuine personification of that ridiculous position of, whoa, a guy's worst fear is a fake accusation. What do you think a woman's worst fear is? The idea that this government who cares about freedom and making this country better is going to do that by ripping away resources for domestic violence survivors makes zero sense. It can't be the case that you're simultaneously selling me this narrative of I need to be worried about trans women in bathrooms or migrants coming into this country and harming the civilian population when Pauline Hanson herself, not One Nation, Pauline Hanson herself knowingly hired a convicted rapist.
I want to go to this controversy over the former One Nation staffer Sean Black, who was a convicted rapist. Did you personally approve the re-employment of Sean Black after the rape conviction?
Yes, I did.
That was a decision she actively made, that the party that's meant to care about Australian culture and preserving our way of life is hiring a convicted rapist and then not only defending that position, but then at the end of the day, backing down from that position.
I'm not going to back away from this, Chris.
No, I can hear that.
Because everyone has a chance, a second chance, and he's been given a chance.
But you have backed away, and that's why I'm asking, I want to get in with this next question. It doesn't stack up. You're saying you don't regret re-employing him after the conviction, yet you dismissed him earlier this week. Those two things can't be right, can they?
That simultaneously, you're telling me that you were this grand figure who's going to combat the elites, who's going to stand up for what's right, to the point where you hire a convicted rapist because somehow that fits into your ethical or philosophical framework, and then at the end of the day, you back down from that decision. So not only do you have this, in my opinion, disgusting ethical and philosophical framework that allows you to bring in someone who is a convicted rapist, whilst at the same time removing protection for domestic violence victims and removing women's health care, but you then don't even have the conviction to stand behind that horrific decision. It's all just one big scam and it's ridiculous. But again, and I can't stress this enough, none of that matters. None of that matters. That's why the scam is so effective, because it's being set up like you were this person who's going to stand for what's right, even though you don't, that you're going to stand in line with your beliefs, even though you aren't, and that you're just like the everyday person. But the reality is you got billionaires backing you. So here's where it all ties together now. None of that matters. None of what I said actually matters to a lot of people. That a lot of the people who support One Nation are not going to make it through this video. They're going to finish at the immigration point and they're going to experience significant discomfort if they continue watching the video to the sexual assault freedom point, and they are going to create this mental model in their head that allows them to continue operating as they normally do. Because at the end of the day, people don't fall for a scam a lot of the time just because they think the scam's effective. They fall for a scam, or they get bought into a scam because there is some genuine thing in their life that is not being met. Sometimes it's a lack of community. Other times it's genuine material harm, like they can't afford their home, or they've been fired, or they don't have the necessary funds. People oftentimes fall for scams or get put in these vulnerable positions because there is some genuine aspect of their life, some genuine need of theirs that is not being met. And the way you then pull people out of a scam isn't to go, it's a pyramid, it's a pyramid, it's a pyramid, over and over and over again. You don't necessarily need to prove to them that it's a scam. You have to find a way to resolve the genuine difficulty they're experiencing. And Labor is doing a pretty decent job of that. It looks like house prices are going to go down up to $100,000. They are slowly correcting things. They are trying to put systems in place that resolve a lot of the difficulties the everyday Aussie is experiencing. But I think the sad thing is, this isn't an information fight. No one cares about the truth. It's really a fight over propaganda. There is never going to be this point where any content creator who's attacking the government is going to switch over to the side of actually the government's doing a good job. They're never ever going to do that because they're not selling the truth. They don't care about that. They're selling a scam. They are selling a particular narrative that the difficulties you're experiencing have nothing to do with you. Nothing is ever your fault. You made no bad decisions whatsoever. It is always the failure of the Labor government. It is always the failure of the immigrants. It is always the failure of the elites. You deserve everything. You should never have anything bad happen to you. And One Nation is going to solve that. And that's unrealistic. But people who are realistic don't buy into that scam. It is the fact that people are scared, people are desperate. And I said this to my audience on TikTok, and the audience I have on YouTube is a lot smaller, but if you made it to the end of this video, it's something I want you to keep in mind. Don't try and correct people on facts. Don't do it. There is this brick wall or steel wall that you are never penetrating. But what you can do is just move to the side and go around it. One Nation's gonna do X, Y, and Z. Why is that important to you? Well, it's important because, you know, I'm gonna lose my home, or I feel like things are bad, or I can't relax, yada, yada, yada. Talk to that. Actually try and get more emotional. Don't try and focus on the facts, because if someone's created their little window of facts, they're not moving out of there. I agree, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating when I'm talking to someone and they are just throwing talking point after talking point, lie after lie, mistruth after mistruth. But what's easiest is like, you sound really stressed. It sounds like it's really, really important for you for these issues to be resolved. Why is that? And talk to them about that. A lot of the time, small business owners are not actually getting scared about the nitty-gritty of the tax system. They're worried about not making enough money to support their family, or being scared that they're going to have to push their retirement later, or they're not going to have money to give to their children. That's where that fear comes from. A lot of the times, people don't actually have an issue with different languages or different cultures. It's the fear that they're going to get left behind or taken advantage of. It's more of a fear response there. So I just encourage all of you that if you have a family member who's, you know, supporting One Nation, or you've got friends or someone like that, try to speak less about the facts of the matter and try and emotionally guide them towards, hey, things are going to be okay. I think it's going to be a lot better to work a lot less on combating every individual mistruth being put forward by One Nation, and instead try and understand why people are feeling particularly, what emotion is coming up, and then try and tie in some of the successes of Labor or some of the cool things to look forward through in the future being put forward by the Labor government, or the Greens, or the Teals, or whoever you support. That people are going to turn their brains off when it comes to policy or numbers, but from a broad, macro, emotional perspective, they will follow that conversation. And I think that's a useful thing to be doing. Try and connect with people, try and feel more human. Don't go debate brained. It doesn't work. I had to learn that the hard way. As always, if you've made it this far into the video, I truly do appreciate your support. Please like, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments. It's really nice to see the channel growing. I really appreciate all of the high point stuff I'm getting, and when you put my videos in, you know, group chats or Reddit threads and all that stuff, I really do appreciate it. Thanks for all your support. It's been real.